You are listening to Radio Ramadan 365 podcasts.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Radio Ramadan 87.7 FM, program Reflections, and I am your host Zubair Akram with another session of Reflections with my guest Shaykh Ruzwan Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Surah Fil sessions we've had, I would say maybe around 10 sessions so far on Surah Fil, and what we have done is Alam tara kayfa fa'ala rabbuka bi ashabil fil. I have a working understanding of language, and today when I was walking to the studio, I was actually rehearsing this first ayah in my mind. Alam tara kayfa fa'ala rabbuka, or because I think in Urdu, तुम्हारे रब ने क्या, यानी क्या तुमने देखा कि तुम्हारे रब ने उनके साथ क्या किया, यानी कैसी कर दी, कैसा कर दिया, और इसका मेरे माइंड में क्या तुमने देखा कि जो तुम्हारे अल्लाह ने उनके साथ किया कुछ अच्छा नहीं किया, क्या किया, कुछ अच्छा नहीं किया, मीनिंग इट वाज, डिड यू सी, यानी इबरत की जगह है। इसके अंदर ये मीनिंग भी है कि डू यू नो कि जो किया वो उनके साथ कोई अच्छी नहीं हुई, बुरा हुआ। Is that
point, yeah, so that comes from actually something we didn't mention at all, that there's foreboding within fa'ala. You said kaise kiya. Kiya is that in Arabic is fa'ala, and fa'ala is the most a universal abstract verb. So fa'ala, fi'al, is just an act. It's not beating, it's not destroying, it's not decimating, it's not giving victory, it's not giving defeat. So basically, look at what's happening in the world. You've got kind of all this sustained attacks on countries by global bullies. You've got these kind of fi'al, which are actions, but you can call them exactly what they are, which are not even preemptive strikes. They're premeditated to destabilize populations and enslave populations. So you can call those actions what they are. But what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says is, kayfa fa'ala, how did your Lord do with the companions of the elephant? So it leaves you wondering, because why did God just not say how did God destroy? Because that would make sense. You just tell everybody what's happening. Did you not see how God destroyed? كيف عذب دمر, how God destroyed or decimated, or زلزلة تحت يعني أرجلهم, or something like that. How God moved the earth from under their feet. Whatever. It doesn't say that, because what it then leads to pure Arab mind who is listening to this would be, okay, what? There's something's going to happen here, because fa'ala is telling us nothing apart from something happened, and it's telling us it must have been, the way it happened must have been something worthy of mention or intrigue. And so then that's what the next verse will give you that. And this is what we talked about. The next verse is essentially what God did. I mean, for me, the main crux of this chapter is kayfa, and then the kayfa, how did it happen, is explained in the next verse. Alam yaj'al kaydahum fi tadlil. And that is, once that happens, everything else just falls into place in terms of destruction, that God made their plot, their strategy fall into unravel, which seems like abstract. Like, how does a strategy fall into unravel? Is that the thing that God did? Yes, God placed within the mind of its leader Abraha that they were not attacking a stone building, the Kaaba. They were not attacking Makkah al-Mukarramah. They were attacking God. And that happened from, first of all, the confidence of Abdul Muttalib, the grandfather of the Prophet ﷺ. Secondly, by the fact that they were known as the people of the elephant that came at the very point where it's easiest for it to come to Mecca, which is all downhill in stone throw of the Kaaba itself. It refuses, and it can only be due to something that is supernatural. And so at that point, because your mind has already accepted the introduction of an external force which is powerful, which is God, you're just thinking, if you're the head of the army, you're just thinking, how are we going to be destroyed? Like, how are we going to destroy us? Because if this is actually the sanctity and the temple where God has told people to come to worship Him, subhanahu wa ta'ala, then if God is protecting it, then it's just a question of how that's going to happen, because it's not going to happen normally. It's not the Meccans, not the Quraysh, not the Arab tribes that are going to come from around the corner. It's going to be something from the heavens. And so you can imagine them looking around, thinking, okay, under the earth, above the sky, they're thinking how it's going to happen. And that is, it's that sense of foreboding, which is in the first verse, that then is amplified in the second verse. And the second verse actually is what God did, and how God did it will then be essentially a demonstration, a physical, demonstrable demonstration of how that took place, which is the...
So the second verse is what was done, and the third is how it was done.
Yeah. So what and how is connected, but because you ask what was done, meaning, what was the, why is a different thing? Why will come actually the end of the verse, end of the chapter, and actually into Surah Quraysh, because it's actually connected. But the what is essentially, essentially is taking away that self-confidence that they came with, that sense of invincibility that they came with. So you can imagine an army, it's full, it's singing its anthem, it's gun happy, and all of a sudden that confidence disappears. It's going to start running. This is a story of many of the greatest victories in human history, where many large armies have been destroyed. They were always destroyed because their sense of confidence disappeared for some reason. Something happened. Like one small thing happened. And this happened so many times in the battles of Islam. Battle of Yarmouk, the Battle of Qadisiyah. The armies the Muslims faced were far greater, far more equipped, far more confident, and strategically far better placed than the Muslims, because they were entrenched. The Sassanid Persian Empire was entrenched in its own homeland. The Romans were entrenched there for millennia, and the Muslims were essentially out of their peninsula. They were outside, basically marauding as nomads, and you would imagine everything was against them, but they won because at a certain point, the confidence, that sense of superiority disappeared. Technological, you would call it technological superiority, superiority in terms of army numbers, all that disappeared. Once it disappears, it's really a question of how quickly they're vanquished and how they're vanquished. And one of the things I'll mention to you is, like, when Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, he faced the Roman Empire in the Battle of Yarmouk. It was the Battle of Qadisiyah. He didn't feel it was something strange for him just in a couple of months down the line to go to the Persian Empire and destroy them as well. Because he saw the confidence disappear. Once the Persians saw the Romans being decimated, the Persians were thinking, how did that happen? They weren't expecting to win then. If they're thinking the Romans just been defeated by this band of Bedouins, there must be something else helping them. Like when our previous ruler, he, Furs, the leader of Furs, he tore up the letter of the Prophet ﷺ, and we mocked the Arabs at that time. Maybe when their prophet said, may God tear up their empire as they tore up my letter, maybe there was some truth in that. And so that in the back of the mind will fester to create this sense of foreboding, which will create this weakness within the army. And that's what we see here. The second verse essentially is that.
So that's picking up from our last session, actually, when I said, so did God break their resolve through this ayah? But you made a distinction of, no, it wasn't resolve. there is a difference between resolve and confidence.
Yeah, there's definitely.
Yeah. So again, living the revelation, this second ayah. So what we're saying is that what has been said, what gets propagated has an effect, and we need to have a very careful measurement of what we say in terms of our power, in terms of your ability, your capacity.
Yeah, you mean messaging is probably half of warfare nowadays. That's why media is so important. The way that media reports certain things, and you'll see now people are very aware of how major media outlets headline events. So the same thing happens, but they describe it in a completely different way. The reason for that description, being different, is because it creates a psychological effect within the human mind. So if you use killing instead of dead, that makes an immediate effect. So that's why there's so much argument about the word genocide, for example, because it creates a completely different narrative. The killing of innocents, for example, the concept makes a big difference in how you view any kind of war. So the attacks on Iran, for example, against innocent civilian targets, you could say, well, people died in an attack, but you can say people were slaughtered not as collateral, but as a strategic attempt to demoralize the population. But in fact, in a population like Iran, for example, where it has a psychological connection with martyrdom, and martyrdom even more than the Sunni tradition, it's something that's glorified as almost like part of creed, because of the events of Karbala, where Sayyidina Hussein radiyallahu anhu wa karamallahu wajha was mutilated and killed, and his family was killed. That resonates with Sunnis as well as Shia, but with the Shia tradition, it becomes more of the fulfillment of the destiny of the Ahlul Bayt, for example. And so, it's said that he said, one of this famous line of poetry, سأمضي وما بالموت عار على الفتى إذا أراد خيرا. He said, I will continue in this battlefield, when he's almost obviously against odds that are unsurmountable. سأمضي وما بالموت عار على الفتى. And there's no blame upon a person. A fata is like a young person who has vigor and valor and courage. If he faces death, especially if he wants to do good, in other words, sacrificing yourself in the path of good, is something I will do, because there's no blame on a person, there's no slight on a person that does that. So that's entrenched within that tradition as well. So that's a psychological state, which means it's very difficult to fight against people who view martyrdom as just one way of getting to the other sphere of existence, which is the hereafter. But it's one. It's like Mutanabbi, من لم يقتل بسيف يموت بغيره، أو من لم يموت بسيف يموت بغيره، تعددت الأسباب والموت واحد. Whoever doesn't die with a sword dies with some other reason. The means by which a person dies are many, but death is the same. So it's a question of not if you die, it's how you die. So it's an inevitability, and I think that's the difference between the Muslim mindset, which is it's an inevitability that you pass away. It's a question on what principles you passed away, even if you don't die in a battlefield. Saving or defending your country, or defending your family, or defending your nation, even if it's not that, you're still in the back of your mind, the purpose is more important than what you do on earth, in a sense. And so that's why why that mental strength is the opposite of what happens here in Surah Fil, where it is أَلَمْ يَجْعَلْ كَيْدَهُمْ فِي تَضْلِيلٍ. Did God not make their plot unravel within itself? That unraveling is a psychological unraveling. this a plot of we will do this, we'll get there, we'll just decimate him, we'll create these trade routes between Yemen and the north, and once and for all create a new nexus of pilgrimage to Sana'a. All that unravels within the small, move of the elephant to refuse to move.
Going back to this again, a bit more on ayah number 2. Did he not bring their plan to naught? Now, again, as we learned that it's been said to Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, but actually to Quraysh. What is being said here? What is it that the Quraysh, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted Quraysh to hear in this ayah?
So, I mean, the thing is, we kind of covered this, I think, yesterday, but I don't know, probably not from this perspective. You're saying, how did the Quraysh
hear this?
Eavesdrop into this?
Yeah. How did it land with them?
Yeah, how did it land with them? The issue is that Kaid is this plot. And the Quran constantly recollects and mentions the fact that they are plotting. So, إِنَّهُمْ يَكِيدُونَ كَيْدًا وَأَكِيدُ كَيْدًا. So this is a constant refrain in the Quran about the desert Arabs. It's about the Bedouins. It's also about the Quraysh, that they plot and plan against the Prophet ﷺ. So they're always looking for a way to undermine the message. They're always looking for a way to explain it. So they will say about the Prophet ﷺ, he is a magician, na'udhu billah, that he is a soothsayer, that he's a fortune teller, that he is a false prophet, and he's mad. So they have all these ways of creating plots to undermine the message. So you'll say, look, this person is born amongst us, but he's a magician, he's a madman, he is a poet, he's all these things. This is a ploy and a plot to get people not to listen to him. So this is one layer of a plot. Then the other layer of the plot is, it manifests itself towards the end of the Meccan period, where they all agree that the only way that you can actually plot to bring this to an end is to actually plot to kill him. And the plot was that they sent one young man from each of the Arab tribes to, at the same time, assassinate the Prophet ﷺ, so the blood of the Prophet ﷺ would be spread amongst the tribes, meaning the responsibility for that and the blame for it would be spread to the point that when Bani Hashim tried to take revenge, they wouldn't be able to take revenge, because how could they take revenge against all the Arab country or all the Arab tribes? And they would essentially have to submit to the humiliation of one of their own being killed for them under the pretext of being a false prophet. So essentially these are plots, and in between these two are many, many other plots, So that is essentially God is saying, look, the plots that Abraha had, to create this military, economic, religious might, power in the Arabian Peninsula for the first time, tying it in. It's almost like the Chinese, this new Silk Road that they've been building for the last decade and a half. Once Arabia's connected into the ecosystem of the world power economy, then it'll become part and subservient to it. And so it will need us, but we won't need them. We can use them, but they will be required to stay, stuck into the system. And this is exactly the same thing the way that the Quraysh were thinking. They had their own plots and plans to continue their prestige and their ability to rule over the Kaaba, which brought in so much resources for them. And their kaid is also going to be unraveled. So they will have to think, if we're plotting, then that plot, because it's a plot and it's against God, and this person claims to be the prophet and people are converting into his religion, if he is true, then our plots that we are plotting are going to also come fi tadlil. They're going to unravel into themselves. So the same, it's a mirror, isn't it? It's a mirror. Where are we? Are we the goodies or the baddies in this situation? We know this happened. We know how it happened. We don't know why it happened, but perhaps God was protecting himself and the idols that allow us to reach him. That's in their mind. They must have thought that. But now they're thinking, oh, maybe not. Maybe we are the people now who are on the inevitable receiving end of something similar. The arcade, our plot, our ploys, our strategies and stratagem are going to unravel in the same way that previously we saw this in living memory.
I'm looking at this. Alam yaj'al kaydahum fi tadlil. And this is just summarizing this. This is a psychological statement for Quraysh, breaking their will, if you like, or warning them of what could be, because it also happened with someone else in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And moving on to the next ayah then. وَأَرْسَلَ عَلَيْهِمْ طَيْرًا أَبَابِيل.
So this is where everyone's memory goes to this, doesn't it? Like the elephant and the birds, Ababil. But the thing, I mean, before I started the show, I actually consulted the first time. I ended up consulting 15, 16 tafasir.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't usually, I mean, I'll go with the Arabic, and if there's anything else, I probably might look, but I don't usually consult the tafsir in that sense. But there was one thing that was getting to me, which was the harf waw. Waw is a letter of the Arabic alphabet, if you know the Arabic alphabet. Mm-hmm. And essentially it says and. So you can think, I mean, I was stuck because in Arabic language, the entry into a verse through one of the predicates or the which are called huruf al-atf, and the way it's used and why it's used is pivotal for the grand scheme of the message itself. Like, why is the next verse coming? What is it being used for? What is it trying to demonstrate? How will it then be used in relation to the previous verse? Is it an explanation of it? Is it an addition to it? Is it a completely new piece of information, for example, which is unconnected to it? So that got me thinking, because in the previous verse, if you think about it, أَلَمْ تَرَ كَيْفَ فَعَلَ رَبُّكَ بِأَصْحَابِ الْفِيلِ. And then what happens? أَلَمْ يَجْعَلْ. Okay, it doesn't say وَأَلَمْ يَجْعَلْ. And it doesn't enter with a harf atf, which is and then just get rid of the interrogative particle by saying, did he not? You could have just said, for example, in English translation, have you not seen how your Lord dealt with the companions of the elephant and made their plot unravel in itself? Do you understand? Like, instead of saying, did he not? God said, and he made their plot unravel. If that was the case, then everything I've said over the last 2 episodes, I think, about the pivotal nature of that plot unraveling would be irrelevant. I mean, I wouldn't be able to make the case. But the absence of the harf atf, the conjunction, means that is the answer, or that's the start of the answer, and anything after that is essentially secondary. So, if you're going to say, I met Ahmed and Ibrahim, why are you saying Ahmed first? Why somebody said, "Kya uske saath aapki zyada mohabbat hai?" Understand? Like somebody would say, "Why do you like him more that you mentioned him first?" The first, what did they say? Close to heart, close to mind. So imagine you met like 5 people and you're going through who you met. The person you mentioned first is usually the person that you have the closest relationship to, or the person that means the most to you, and then the person at the end is probably the person you forget, and you say, "There's another person. Who was it? Oh yeah, it was Akbar. Yeah, it was Akbar." And so the superiority comes in terms of how I met him and him and him and him. But here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, have you not seen how we dealt with and how we did to the companions of the war elephant? Did we not? That is the answer to it. you know, when I was saying that, you were kind of saying, how is that the main crux? It's the main crux because the plot and the psychological weakness created in the enemy is the most important part of this whole story. The other part is the fireworks, you know. So this is the action part of it, but the actual impact has already taken place. You know, the actual impactful thing has already taken place, which is the plot has been unraveled. Once the plot's unraveled, you were just there with popcorn. And if you want to use a modern meme example, you're just there with popcorn watching what's going to how it's going to happen. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Like you know it's going to happen, so you get, okay, guys, let's get the popcorn. Let's watch how this is going to unfold, because it's going to unfold. You know it's going to unfold because the kaid has been unraveled, and so that's why in the third verse, how does it start?
وأرسل عليهم وأرسل.
Yeah, and so there it's this is going to start to. It's essentially what happened is actually what I was really surprised about. None of the tafsir I went to, every major tafsir I went to, I went one after another, and the answer to this I found in the tafsir of one of my own shuyukh, Shaykh Durra, who's an amazing man. He just passed away in 2000, I think 2 years after I left Damascus. He passed away in Homs. Shaykh Durra, he was elderly, but he was somebody who wrote two things that are really important. He wrote 4 or 5 different things, but so as a contemporary scholar, he wrote an encyclopedia of the Arabic language around the grammar book of Ibn Hisham, which is Mughni al-Labib. And he basically, you know, he's a master of Arabic language. He was like intoxicated with Arabic. He was like in love with the language, and he spent his whole life doing that. The second thing he did was grammatical analysis of the Quran. And the grammatical analysis was annexed with a short tafsir for each verse. But this book is like 10 volumes. So I went to that, and he was the only person that discussed that specific point in a way that he just indicates that he doesn't go into in depth. He just indicates it, and then he kind of expands it. And this, I think, is it's a wider point. I think tafsir, I think a lot of people don't understand what tafsir is and what the purpose of tafsir is. Tafsir, essentially, a good tafsir is there essentially to ensure that you don't go down the wrong pathway in terms of understanding the language. In other words, the words, what does it mean? When was it revealed? Why was it revealed? But you know, the thing of the impact, the thing of the purpose, the thing of the reflection on what is being said and what it means, you know, in a deep sense, almost no tafsir really does that, because it's not supposed to do that. No tafsir is supposed to expand the kind of thing we're doing. Reflections is like expanding the psychological state of the listener and the backstory to the what the effects could be and the interconnectedness of history. Very few, almost no tafsir has set out to do that, because that's the purpose of the human being. And I think this is a very important point for the listeners, is that tadabbur cannot be done for you. Like if you want a ready-made tadabbur meal where somebody is reflecting upon the Quran for you, then who's that person going to be? Where are they going to live? What's their mindset? What's their history? What is their life experience? What are their values? It's all going to be different from yours. Their life experience, where they live, how they live, what challenges they face, how they receive information. Like, I would tell people that in this day and age, to do tadabbur is extremely easy, but extremely difficult. Extremely easy because we have the ability to almost, survey history and the past and ideas and people in a way that nobody could really do in the way that we're able to do. You know, we can survey ideas, we can use artificial intelligence to give executive summaries of things, and we can bring to our fingertips lots of reference points, and then we can say, okay, that connects to this, connects to that. and therefore it creates this picture of how history has moved in a way that maybe pre-modern people couldn't do. And the other thing, the reason why it's difficult is because we have so many preoccupations to stop us doing deep thinking. So that same thing, which is a positive, which is technology, is also the thing that makes us think very superficially as well. So, for example, let me finish this point. For example, when the Iran conflict started a couple of days ago, everybody's response essentially was about the news feed, the headlines. This is unjustified, aggression. This is absolutely all true. But the thing is, that is not going to help the situation. Like, if you're a politician, you have to give a statement, condemning, or you're a public figure, you have to give out that statement.
Yeah, the soundbite.
No, but it's not a soundbite, but it's also your duty, as people want to know what's your headline position and are you for it, against it, what's your observations on it. But the thing about the analysis and what it means and how it will unfold is a different matter, and that requires tadabbur, is to look at, okay, what is because when we did that, just very quickly arranged, and we decided not to do the show. We did our kind of thoughts on the Middle East. Essentially, what I was kind of intonating was, for me, the that kind of tadabbur on all the claims of what's happening, and just to make sure we have a perspective on this, because those headlines day in, day out will not help us analyze what it means, and also how it will unfold, and also the kind of religious, moral, historical perspective on the situation. So, in that I mentioned the vitality of the Shia tradition religiously, and it's not tied to one individual person. And also the politicization of the Shia religion, I think, has been detrimental to it. And I think has been detrimental to the wider region. So that was a different thing. But the point is, that's tadabbur on the trajectory of Shia religiosity and the effect it's having on actually people remaining Muslim. And at the end of the day, I had the same problem with the way that religiosity is pushed in Sunni majority countries as well, where in the time and age we live in, to impose and to attempt to impose and indoctrinate people on religious doctrine is not only counterproductive, it's anti-prophetic as well, because I don't believe the Prophet at any moment would even attempt to think about that, never mind attempt to do it. So that's, again, that criticism is one that is shared with their Sunni brethren as well, because I think you cannot do that. It was just information technology, the world's a global village, it doesn't work. And so that's why, what was I talking about? Tahadurra. I was talking about Tahadurra. Yeah, so he's the one.
Can we actually, take a break here, and inshallah we will continue after this break. Reflections with Shaykh Ruzwan, Surah Fil, और इस सेशन में सूरह फील की हम दूसरी आयत पे ख़त्म करके तीसरी पे जा रहे हैं कि तुमने देखा नहीं कि तुम्हारे रब ने हाथी वालों के साथ क्या किया, क्या उसने उनकी तदबीर को अकारत नहीं कर दिया। और जिसे हम अब इस सेशन के आखिरी हाफ में डिस्कस करेंगे वो है, और उन पर परिंदों के झुंड भेज दिए। A short ad break and inshallah we'll be right back. Allahu Akbar. So Shaykh, wa arsala alayhim tayran ababil, मैं उर्दू ज़रा पढ़ लूँ ताकि मुझे समझ में आए कि क्या है ये। wa arsala alayhim, और उन पर परिंदों के झुंड भेज दिए। और उन पर, और हमारा पॉइंट ऑफ रिफ्लेक्शन ये है कि और क्यों यूज किया गया, वाह क्यों है यहाँ पे। चलें इस बारीक नुक्ते पे आज रहनुमाई लेते हैं। बिस्मिल्लाह।
So I don't know where we ended up in the last section of that, because I talked to one of my teachers, Shaykh Tahadurra rahimahullah. He wrote this extensive tafsir. It was actually Arab of Quran, actually. It's still almost unknown, actually. It's such a shame that his works are unknown, because he basically had a small publishing house that supported his publications. But he was an amazing wali of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but also very erudite in his utilization of the Arabic language to bring that imagery. So basically, i'rab, which is grammatical analysis, is served for one specific purpose, which is to create the ground within which you can analyze and appreciate the mechanism and the movement within the Quranic text and the interconnectedness of verses. So harf atf essentially is and, you add it on and you kind of say this and that. So the first verse, it tells you, sets out, have you not seen how God dealt with those people? And then the second verse tells you what was it that God did that essentially created the destruction of Ababil in terms of internally, not Ababil, Ashab al-Fil, internally that psychological weakness, because it entered into the mind, a kind of memory and an idea, implanted an idea within the mind of Abraha that he couldn't win this battle. And that was a pivotal point. When the يَجْعَلْ كَيْدَهُمْ فِي تَضْلِيلٍ, that is expressed, it's a turning. Ja'ala is to turn something from one thing to another. That turning essentially affects the psychology, and once the psychology is impacted, then the way of destruction is very clear. It's actually it reminds me of an idea of Nietzsche when he talks about the fact that in life you have a choice in terms of how you live, and one of the biggest choices you have is in terms of your memories. You have a bank. Imagine you have a bank of memories. So from in your life, happy, sad, melancholy, you got all these things. You have a choice essentially to, and this is what he calls the will to power, is to decide what memories you take forward in your life. Those memories you take forward, which are either good or bad, sad, melancholy, or happy, or productive, or whatever it is, essentially start to create the mindset that you will go into the future with, and they will essentially shape your destiny. And that, we know that from neurology as well. You have this idea of neuroplasticity. So you can create pathways within the mind that then dictate how you view things. So, things that are happening in the Middle East, if you create a neuroplasticity in the mind that you analyze things in terms of their deeper, long-term meaning, when you see something, your analysis is completely different from a person whose neuroplasticity is good, bad. Do you understand? Colonialization and imperialism, or regional power, or oil price, or gold price. And so your neuroplasticity, which is how you make meanings, you have the control over. Nobody else has the control over that. And so that is what Nietzsche talks about. It's like, your mind is like a fire, but it's up to you. You decide actually what kind of fuel you give it. So it's a fire, it's going to burn. You have a mind, it's going to think. Your choice is how you make that, what fuel you give that.
Do we have a choice? We discussed it, that we have no control over khayal. We don't know where it comes from, how it comes from. We can't force our mind. It just happens.
No, that's khatira. Khawatir is something you have no control over. And that's why you deal with the khawatir. Khawatir are just passing. Come on. Khawatir are not connected to the neuroplasticity discussion, because there's kind of ideas that come, you don't know where it came from. Okay. And be angelic.
Khayale khatire ehbab jai. Khayale khatire, acha, theek hai. Khayal different hai aur khatir different hai. Khayale khatire ehbab chahiye.
Yeah, khayal is your imagination. That is something that you can nurture. How you imagine. So khayal is imagination. Your instantiation of an idea in reality, your ability to imagine a better future, for example. Like imagine if you were with what's his name, Martin Luther King, isn't it? Yeah, Martin Luther King. While he's giving that speech in Washington, I have a dream.
I have a dream.
So that's him doing exactly what you think. The khayal, he's trying to imagine something into existence. And so they say, like, the next generation of Afro-Americans never saw that into fruition. Even to this day, they've not seen it into fruition. They've seen the opposite, because you had Obama, who should have been the epitome of that, essentially killing more people than any previous American president, and overseeing that. So that's a khayal anyway. Khawatir is something that comes and it goes, and you can get rid of it. You can nurture it, you can get rid of it. So if it's a divine idea or thought or impulse is a better way of looking at khatira. An impulse, if it's a good impulse, you can nurture it, you can take it, and you can feed it good energy, and you can essentially allow it to ingrain itself. A satanic khatira, which is an idea which you shouldn't have, you repulse it, you just get rid of it right away, immediately. You don't give it a home, and it disappears at the moment that happens. But here it's something different, which is the imagination and the khatir are different from the way that you have the ability to control your pathways through dhikr, for example. So you sit and you do dhikr, like the Prophet said, whoever recites La hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-ali al-azim will never be afflicted by, in a day, will never be afflicted by faqa, which is poverty. When you're doing that, what are you doing? You're creating neuroplasticity, or you're utilizing neuroplasticity to create connections between the dhikr and the way you're going to now live your life. Because that mantra will affect, that positive mantra will affect the way that you deal with life. You'll go into life much more confident, much more open to, and this is psychological studies have done this, you're much more open to opportunities if you're doing a dhikr that will give you a lack of poverty. In other words, this will protect you from poverty. How you engage with opportunities is different from if you think, I'm going to remain poor forever, I'm always going to be destitute and desperate. Okay, that's not the mindset you go in with. You go in with a mindset of can do. This can be done, which is why modern psychology is really a dead horse, because it digs into the negative, and it digs into the things that need to be fixed by fixating on them, and the person comes out of like counseling or something and they're completely depressed, because the process is actually worse. The problem sometimes probably worse than the problem they have in the first place. So that's so anyway, the point is that is what happened to Abraha. The idea went in, and the plasticity in his mind must have been do. I mean, remember we talked about what he did. The reason I mentioned what he'd done, he convened international conferences in Sana'a that never, in fact, in the Sad Ma'rab, which is the dam of Ma'rab, he reintroduced it into usage, and he brought a whole international delegation of all the major powers to come and have a meeting there. That's no small thing, to have the ability to bring all these leaders together from northern Arabian Peninsula and around the surrounding countries to reintroduce the dam as well, to build this massive cathedral, and to actually stand up to even the people that he was a governor to, the Aksum dynasty. He was able to do all that. In other words, he'd created this can-do mentality in his mind, and that neuroplasticity that would have been very well attuned about the point that he came to the Kaaba and he decimated all the Arab tribes that came in his way on the pathway, all of a sudden was short-circuited the moment that the elephant stopped moving. And so the wow here is now going to take us in. The reason I was talking about this is Taha Durra mentions the harf atf, which is simply harf atf, because it can be from other, the harf wow can be for different reasons. Isti'naf, which is to start a completely different idea, or it can be for hal, so it indicates how something accompanied something else, for example, or the state of the person or in situation when it happened. It can be lil mughayara, to start a completely different chapter. It has different usages, but the simple use here is atf, meaning this is going to be an expansion of what came before, which shows the point that I was making, which is alam yaj'al kaydahum fi tadlil, which is, did their not plot unravel under their feet. That is the main thing on the menu. That's the main point. That's the main way that they are done by God. Because fa'ala, as I said, and you noticed actually, qiyya, done. That was the main thing that was done to them. They were done over. You know, English, actually, there you go. They were done over. How were they done over? Mentally, psychologically. And then how...
So the main thing that happened is psychological, and that happened before. So what happened is not that they उनका भूस बन गया और वो मतलब टिक्का बोटी हो गए. वो नहीं है. The main thing happened is before it happened, they knew it's going to happen.
Yeah, they knew. So they were the expectation. If you were with them, and the elephant was called Mahmud didn't obey orders.
Yeah.
If you were in the army and you were Abraha, I guarantee he was looking around. Like I can guarantee he actually forgot what Makkah was at that point.
Yeah.
And this is before anything comes. There's silence. The elephant's going left to the east, west, left, right to the west, east to, right to the east, south, every direction. And the silence, the wind is probably the only sound you have. And then the army probably just encamped, waiting impatiently to move forward. And then everyone's just looking. You can just imagine they're looking around. Well, so the ground, something to do with the ground, we're going to be swallowed up. And the elephant and the people in that valley are then visited by the how it's going to happen. Kaifa is going to be now the second episode, the second kind of, the second chapter of the story. Wa arsala, and God sent. It's God that sent upon them, arsala alayhim tayran ababil. Flying animals. Tayran is like tuyur. Tayr is singular. Tuyur is the plural. Tayran is like, it's very interesting morphologically in terms of sarf. It's very interesting because it should be tuyur. Tuyur is birds, flocks of birds. Tayran has this image of, in modern Arabic actually, the word for a plane is tayran. Tayran is like a flying object.
Yeah, Gulf Air.
Yes. All right. Yes. So the point is that even the morphology is actually fascinating, because if the image that was wanted was birds flying about, it would have said tuyur, and you would have this very beautiful, cozy idea of lovely sparrows flying about and nightingales, and you've got this. Tuyur is almost at a time when there was no such thing as, kind of armaments in the sky or military craft in the sky, like planes or fighter bombers. Tayran immediately tells you it's not the thing that you normally see in the sky flying, which is birds. It's Tayran is, they are flying. They're flyers. So they're basically objects that fly. But they're birds, so we know, we're not denying the fact they're birds, but the way that it's expressed is as important as what it is. So do you understand? Like how we're reading the word, and an Arab would read the word Tayran is different from Tuyur. And it creates a kind of mechanistic idea of what is coming. Ababil. And this is essentially going to be the name. So what's important here is actually the image and the foreboding, which you mentioned, fa'ala, kayfa fa'ala, that idea of did them over. So that's the kind of thing that just came to my mind, actually. They were done over. Done meaning that's like the same thing to do. Fa'ala is the same type of universal absolute verb. All of that creates that sense of foreboding. And so obviously, if you tie it back to what we were saying right at the beginning of the chapter, the Quraysh are the recipients of this chapter. Secondarily, in a second-hand sense, the Prophet is the one that was given. It's he's the one that's recited to. He's the one that's asked to reflect. The Quraysh are listening into it, and they're thinking, who was done over? How were they done over? Why were they done over? All of that is now going to start playing into their mind. And for me, it starts to indicate the fact that their plots are unraveling as they're listening to this. Because if they now see and relive what happened in living memory for them of this onslaught of airborne projectiles being thrown upon this army, to the point that it was one of the ways that the army was decimated and humiliated, then their kaid, which they're doing and plotting, they're also plotters, they're also planners, they're also people that are trying to undermine the Prophet ﷺ. Now they'll be thinking, he does come with speech which is different. He comes with speech which we're unable to challenge. He challenges us to bring the like of it, and when we're unable to do it, he brings a verse like, "In kuntum fi raybin mimma nazzalna ala abdina fa'tu bi suratin min mithlihi." If you have any doubt over what we've given to our servant slave Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then bring the like of it. Bring the like of that, and that plotting cannot help them do that. So if they're thinking he can do that, which we don't know how he does, then at the back of their mind there must be a belief that he is in some way divinely protected. And if he's divinely protected, then what happened to the people of the elephant could be around the corner for us. And the way that Abraha was looking around, thinking about how is our destruction going to take place, they're also going to start to look around, and at the back of their mind, individually at night, in the depths of night, turning in their bed, they will be thinking about that. Abu Sufyan, Abu Lahab, Abu Jahl, Ubay ibn Khalaf, all these people will be sweating, thinking. And the moment that, there's a famous line in a very famous movie, Jo dar gaya,
Mar gaya.
Samjho mar gaya. You have to quote it properly. Samjho mar gaya. The person that is afflicted by fear, you might as well assume them to be dead. So this is the thing, that psychological warfare. I think this is, I think people, nations prepare people for war, and they soften the ground through soft propaganda and celebrities and music and support, and they get people ready for the inevitable bloodshed. That's psychological warfare. That's psychological preparation. And I think we are so entrenched in this that, our responses to events like that are taking place now are very much created by the fact that we're not able to respond to those in any meaningful way. We're not aware, and we're not able to repulse them. The repulsing of those methods of communication and propaganda, and essentially brain control and thought control, are the first step in resistance of anything, especially a global, it's like an oligarchy world order in the hands of a small percentage of the world's population. The response to that and the resistance to that starts with freeing your mind. So this is why I'm kind of really focused in the beginning of the chapter on how the mind works and how the mind is either colonized or not. So they use colonized now, they say basically enslaved. But it's a question of recognizing the patterns through which that happens. And the way it happens is different. I mean, the way that the army of Abraha will be decimated, there'll be different ways of bombing.
So, final few moments of today's session, people waiting for iftar. You said something about zikr can create pathways. Zikr can free your mind. Zikr can make you decide positively. And you also live by your positive memories. So that pathways are created. And zikr helps. Something on that. We have final few moments.
Yeah, just passing in. This is such an important thing because Allah says, "Udhkurullah dhikran kathira." Remember God profusely. The profuse remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that when you resonate with the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then He's al-ma'bud bil-haq. He's the one that's worshipped. But there's many things that are worshipped. People worship idols. People worship wealth. People worship passions. But al-ma'bud bil-haq, in accordance with what is real, in other words, the creator, sustainer, the one that brings things into being from non-existence, once you start to make mention of that with understanding of what that means, it creates pathways that you are a servant of the one true God. And if you also have a dhikr on Ya Fattah, for example, the one that opens up and opens pathways that are blocked, the meditation on that then creates neural pathways. We know this from modern neuroscience. It creates a pathway so that you then, the next day when you act expecting that. Do you understand? And so it moves from the pessimistic, depressive mode of most people in the way that they think into one where, well, my Lord is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Fattah.
Yeah, this is my Lord. يُطْعِمُنِي وَيَسْقِينِي. This is what the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam said. He's the one that gives me food and gives me water to drink. In other words, when you're breaking your fast, you have to make the connection between what's going into your mouth and the fact that God is the one that's giving it. There might be ways that it happens, you work, but essentially you have to connect the thing that's coming to you to a name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And once you start creating that neural pathway, it means that the way that you now start to go into your life and live your life going forward is a complete different, different way of thinking, different way of engaging. And it's an empowering way of engaging, because you cannot, وَلَا تَحِنُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا وَأَنْتُمُ الْأَعْلَوْنَ. Allah says, and do not have a depressive state of mind, and do not lose hope, because you will be the ones that are foremost if you're believers. Believers in what? Believers in Allah, believers in His name, believers in His qualities and attributes, believers in the fact that He is the one that decimated the army of the war elephant. So this is why all of that's important, because it gives you a world view. It's completely different from the world view people have now of consumerism, of worshipping items and power and politics. It gives you a completely different worldview. And once the worldview changes, your values are much more about justice, about equality, about people having the ability to express their belief in God in a way that is in complete unity with their internal spiritual state.
Jazakallah khair. This is all we have for today's reflections. Inshallah, we'll be back tomorrow with another one. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.